Hello, and welcome to another short box. I am Zeckthar, and this month we will be talking about those sneaky characters known as assassins. Since the beginning of sentient life, there has always been a shadowy figure in the night, lurking in the dark with a knife ready to strike. Throughout history, they have gone by many names: hitmen, butchers, and killers, but the most common is assassin. The basic use of assassins in any empire is to remove unwanted units, or single enemies, usually leaders, through stealth and murder. While some species have schools to teach such skills, like the imperium of man's three main temples, the Calidus, Calexis, and the Vindicare, others have built their whole society around it, such as the Drukhari. And then you have some species where it just comes naturally to a select few, such as the commandos of the orcs, or the lictors of the Tyranids. This week, we will be discussing one of my brother Yuxin's favorite assassins, Morias Skult, an imperial assassin of the Temple Vindicare. Now, before I get into the history of Mr. Skult, I need to share with you a wee bit about the Temple of Vindicare. Vindicare operatives are the most skilled snipers and marksmen in the Imperium of Man, and are usually directed to assassinate targets who are believed to have been possessed by demonic entities, or to have been corrupted by the ruinous powers of chaos. In addition to the art of sniping, Vindicare assassins are also trained in stealth and evasion techniques, in order that they get into the most advantaged positions from which to take their shot and to successfully elude capture and disappear once their target is eliminated. The necessity for these skills is determined by the fact that a kill can only be made from the best position. Vindicare assassins have been known to occupy a position for solar days, or even weeks before taking their shot. The signature weapon of the Vindicare Temple is the Exodus rifle, which is the finest example of imperial weaponsmithing. Handcrafted by the Magos artisans of the Adeptus Mechanicus, each Exodus rifle is customized to the specifications of the individual assassin, perfectly balanced and individually crafted. These weapons will never jam, never overheat, never fail, and never falter. The Exodus rifle contains a sophisticated machine spirit that is sleek and murderous, an echo of the assassin who wields the weapon, and in its owner's capable hands, the rifle has sealed the demise of countless targets. Now, I tell you all of this to explain our assassin and his weaponry. Morias Skult was one of those dealers of death, and his most notable work was in the Roxanne system in 924.M40. At the time being only a second-class assassin, Skult was dispatched to the Roxanne system to eliminate the threat of the orc warlord Urgok, the Unstoppable, who was uniting the desperate orc tribes of the northern continent of the world Roxanzand into a mighty orc Wog. The orcs conducted a massive military build-up, unabated, and most worryingly, were in the process of constructing a mighty Gargant. Skult deployed without detection as a lone operative via a standard one-man drop pod and infiltrated the orc camp. After killing 5 orc sentries, their bodies were disposed of with quick burning incendiaries. Skult then proceeded to insert himself into the near-completed Gargant, planting high-charge, low-mass explosives throughout the various vulnerable points on the structure of the Gargant. He then extracted himself and took up a position on top of a very high nearby cliff, where he held a commanding view of the encampment. The next morning, Skult assassinated Urgok with a single headshot from his Exodus rifle. He then proceeded to fire upon the Gargant, igniting the carefully placed explosives, which caused a chain reaction. The Gargant exploded spectacularly, and Skult made good his escape. The assassin then made his way back to his drop pod and was picked up. Despite this tremendous display of skill at infiltration and accuracy, Skult's mission was declared only 86% successful, for the damage dealt to the Gargant was not total enough to prevent reconstruction. However, the death of the warlord and the delay in rebuilding the destroyed Gargant caused a slowdown in the orcs' war efforts, allowing time for the Imperial Navy vessels to arrive and bombard the site from orbit, effectively eliminating the Greenskid threat. He continued to be a bringer of death, and was eventually anointed as Vindicare Grand Master. Not soon after this, he was part of an Imperial strike team of the Officio Assassinorum, sent to the strife-ridden Imperial world of Opus to eliminate the rogue assassin Legienstrasse, formerly of the defunct Morias Temple. Now, Legienstrasse was a defect of the Imperium, an attempt to start a new temple of assassins called the Morias Temple. Each of the 6 known temples of the Officio Assassinorum trains its assassins to excel at particular types of killing,
to cover a wide variety of targets and tactical situations. An example would be the Calidus Temple, who are known for, or should I say not known for, the art of deception of the enemies of the Imperium, or the group that we've been talking about during this entire Vox, the Vindicare, who specialize in marksmanship. The Morias, the Seventh Temple, was created to deal with multiple targets simultaneously, such as the command hierarchy of an enemy army, or the members of a particular widespread cult. The Morias adepts recognize that no matter how skilled the assassin, it becomes exponentially harder to kill subsequent targets who have been alerted to the initial kill. To that end, the Morias assassins were designed to be living weapons, able to kill masses of people with no weapon except their own bodies, since even the finest and most carefully maintained weaponry was subject to failure, other than the Exodus rifle. Their modus operandi was to enter into a target-rich area, typically a meeting or gathering, and kill every sub-target present as quickly as possible. It was first conceived in the early years of M40, and was developed by heretics, not heretics, I know it's slightly confusing, under the express orders of the Officio Assassinorum. Centuries were spent trying to gain leverage over the Mechanicus adepts to develop the illegal technology needed to create the Morias unique assassins. Whole wars were fought, and even standard template constructs were handed over to the priests of Mars as payment for the tests and research needed. The Morias Temple started as a huge, illegal experiment camp where thousands of prisoners were rendered down to create the genetic material required to make the first assassin. Forbidden technologies such as mutant crossbreeding and Xenos hybrids, most likely Tyranid strains, were combined to create the first, and technically last assassin, Legienstrasse. At some point, Legienstrasse went rogue and decided that she had the potential to topple the Imperium as she saw fit. Such was the threat that she presented, the Officio Assassinorum willingly made pacts with demons and chaos space marines from the World Eaters to attack the remote planet of Opus, where Legienstrasse had taken refuge. Now, I must remind you, fine listeners, that while the Assassins of the Imperium are an interesting read, they are the darkest and most vile specimens of humanity that the Imperium has to offer. Such is the case that the Assassinorum spent decades seeding the innocent planet of Opus with chaos cults and creating civil unrest against the Emperor. The result was an investigation by Lord Inquisitor Kekrops and his followers. Upon arriving on Opus, the Inquisition and all but one of his retinue were assassinated by Vindicare operatives. The blame for this action fell on the decadent ruling class. Full-out war was declared on Opus, and an Imperial retribution force of dozens of Imperial Guard regiments and a sizable detachment of the Imperial 5th Space Marines under the command of Darnath Lysander were deployed to bring Opus back into line. It was secretly hoped by the Assassinorum that the war would force Legienstrasse into the open and flee the planet, allowing the Assassinorum a chance to finally kill her after almost a millennium of being on the loose. Now, getting back to the particulars of Legienstrasse, and why the Order of Assassins was so desperate to kill her, was actually pretty simple. They had created a monster. She was genetically altered to use the membranes along her body and absorb the biomass of any victim she killed, using the new genetic material to force massive, rapid mutations across her body. The more she continued to kill, the more she absorbed, growing even more powerful. It was considered virtually impossible for her to be killed. Being female, and thanks in no small part to the Xenos DNA used to create her, Legienstrasse was able to lay eggs to create more assassins. At least one clutch of these eggs was known to have hatched, and an entire company of Imperial Guard troopers were eaten alive by the infants. The Officio Assassinorum spent centuries hunting down every last offspring. It is unclear if they were successful in doing so. In combat, Legienstrasse proved to be a near godlike foe. During a confrontation in the city of Cry, Legienstrasse was able to combat Captain Lysander of the Imperial Fists, a squad of assault marines and First Company veterans, the Imperial Fist chapter's Emperor's champion, and a Grand Master of the Calixtus Temple, while simultaneously dodging sniper fire from a scout squad and Grand Master Skult of the Vindicare Temple. The Calixtus Master Lady, Cincilia, was killed, alongside a number of Imperial Fists. Now remember, Legienstrasse at this point, if she's killed them, she's obtained their DNA. She's even more powerful now. In the second battle, Captain Lysander led a squad of Terminators, the epistolary of the First Company, Emperor's champion Uceligon, Grandmaster Skult of the Vindicare, and the ever-sore operative against Legienstrasse. During the battle, Morias Skult ultimately failed in achieving his objective. While attempting to kill the rogue assassin one final time from an Imperial Fist Thunderhawk gunship, Legienstrasse leapt upon one of the flyer's wings and badly damaged it, causing the gunship to crash and kill everybody aboard, including our assassin, Morias Skult. And what of Legienstrasse? Well, she continued to fight on until only the ever-sore Berserker was left, and she was even able to defeat him. But as they say, pride goeth before the fall. Knowing that ever-sore assassins explode after dying, a deliberate result of their cocktail and chemicals and drugs, Lysander used the black sword of the fallen Uceligon to pin both the ever-sore assassin and Legienstrasse to a pillar. The resulting explosion crippled Legienstrasse, poisoning her. Lysander cut off her head from her shoulders with a still intact sword. But the murderous assassin continued to live. Only by finally smashing her body to dust with his thunderhammer was Lysander able to finally kill the murderous assassin, leaving Lysander the only survivor of the final confrontation with Legienstrasse. And unfortunately, that is the end of our assassin, Morias Skult. But remember, fine listeners, this is not an unusual ending for a man who dealt in death. To those that walk the assassin's path, they are almost assured of violent death, alone and unremembered, unless they did something of note in history.
Well, tune in next time when I discuss one of my favorite humans, who has never stepped in the temple of the Assassinorum. We could beat any of them in marksmanship. I am speaking, of course, of Sly Marbo, the greatest human of stealth and destruction across the entire solar system. If you like this box, please like, follow, and subscribe. And as always, this is Zeckthar, signing off.